Hello, my name's Dave Smithson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Geology for Lift Power. We're a lithium-focused company working in Canada, and we're looking for pegmatites with big loads of spodumene on them.
Dave, thank you very much for the introduction. Good to meet you. I did an interview a few months back with Francis, and I was very impressed with the way that you were handling information, the way that the cross-sections were generated. Now, presumably, a lot of that is kind of your responsibility. Before we get into kind of what you're doing exactly on the project, could you give me a bit of background about you and what your kind of experience is?
Yeah, I mean, my background started in the majors, in the precious and base metal space for Newmont. Spent lots of time in West Africa, through the Americas also as a regional gold specialist for Newmont. And that's where I met Francis. He was working in North America and Africa as well. And so we crossed over and met there, and then our paths crossed again in the junior world later on. I've gone on to do multiple junior companies, done some sales, founded some companies in Peru, done a lot of exploring, learned a lot of lessons, found a lot of mineralization, and had a hell of a lot of fun along the way. But it's all been a very big learning experience, and all of that knowledge is now being focused into lift and looking for pegmatites.
Earth science is a very kind of broad field, and as a geologist, you can often kind of go downstream to kind of get involved integrating with mineralogy, metallurgy, and kind of mining engineering, kind of more into the operation side, or one can stay in the exploration phase, looking at resources and reserves. How far downstream do you go, and kind of how integrated, in your experience, have you been with operations, or have you kind of typically just taken them to, I don't know, pre-feasibility study or feasibility study stage?
My experience has been in the feasibility level, and largely exploration. The Yellowknife Pegmatite project, it really is an integration of both. It's development, it's exploration, it's resource, it's metallurgy, it's environment, it's all these things all happening at the same time. And so it's a unique project and a unique company in that the people that work within the company, they're all people with very distinct and very widespread different backgrounds that are all contributing a very different perspective and a very different piece of the puzzle. And there's a lot of pieces which need to come together all at the same time to make these things happen. And in terms of it being an exploration / resource and development project, we have to do those two things in real time and together. And that's the unique challenge of this project. And that's where the integration of information and the visualization of information in real time is so critical. And the systems that we put in place are there so we can keep up with the pace of the project, and geologists can visualize real-time data. And we produce incredible amounts of information, from spectral core scanning to, multi-element geochemistry to ground-based geophysics to airborne geophysics. So it's all about integration of information and visualization of information. And that's all focused into the drill in real time. And, these things are unique because they do stick out of the ground. And so we've had a real leg up to begin the project, myself particularly, because I can see where they are and I can point a drill at them and sort of know what I'm going to get, because these things have been known about for a long time. And people have held onto them for a long time because they realized what the actual, the volume of material out there is incredible. And I'm sure this represents one of the largest resource bases in North America. Eventually it will. And, the pegmatite fields and the geology is outstanding. It's world-class, and it's very infant. And so as a geologist, to get the opportunity to come in and explore something that's so well exposed, get to throw all the technical tools at it, use all of the all of the latest software and visualization programs to bring it all together, and understand it and see that translated into good drilling is what it's all about, and what's so exciting about this project from a technical perspective.
Lots of information there, kind of lots to unpack. But just you spoke about, having to do everything, or the kind of the project is doing everything. It's doing development, it's doing environmental stuff, it's doing the resource work, it's doing everything all at once. In a sense, that's not unique. Many companies go in there and have got a kind of a plan to develop quickly. You also mentioned about the scale of the potential, the kind of these lithium and pegmatite fields, and just there's so much out there. Are you going to do both of those going forward? Are you going to continue to kind of grow the envelope of the resources
100%.
and explore, and also kind of take the first, let's call it commercial chunk, and then try and advance that?
No, I mean, coming from the Newmont experience, one of my tasks there was Brownfields, and so I understand really the importance of brownfields, and usually they come after the resource and things are defined, and then people start looking out. Here we're starting that early, and we're not just focusing on what we got, we're focusing on the whole district, because we want to see where those brownfields tons are, and the closer they are to our infrastructure, the closer they are to our resource, the more chance they have of coming into focus for resource. All of those techniques that we're employing, we're trying to develop a matrix of techniques that bring us to the best drilling possible. And we're doing that all on the surface, and we're doing that subsurface. We're doing that with geophysics, geochemistry. We're working with the till. We're working with the rock. We're working with all the mediums that we can to gain that understanding as rapidly as possible. And we do have another project out east which is covered. So we have this amazing, beautiful exposed system where we can really understand it. And there are pegmatites, for example, in the early drilling on Fine Main, we discovered that you can drill spodumene, and you can also step away from the spodumene and drill fresh granite. And so with no spodumene, same rock has spodumene, parts of it don't have spodumene. So, all the dikes that we see out there, we see a lot of dikes outfield from what we have in the resource. We see that they have spodumene, but there's an incredible volume of dikes which look exactly the same, but they don't particularly have spodumene. So what is it about them that makes them fertile? What is it about them that, how do you find more? Where do you get them from? So they're the driving questions behind the exploration of how do you get more? Where do you find your brownfields, and how do you focus it? And that's one aspect.
You talk about brownfields. Brownfield exploration is typically around an operating mine. You haven't got a mine, you haven't got a resource yet. So there's
no mining.
Your guidance is that you're going to be putting out a mineral resource in this half of the year, H2.
Yeah, we should, in September should be the time.
Presumably, the drilling towards that resource is completed, and you're in the process of kind of integrating data from that, the drilling that goes towards that mineral resource estimate. Yeah,
the drilling is complete. We've completed 49,500 meters of drilling on 8 pegmatites. And we have our own in-house estimates, but we also have estimates out with experts in this field that can give us their very best estimation of how many tons we have out there and what the grades are. And we also have the metallurgy running in parallel with that resource work.
Judging by the language that you used, kind of calling it moving on to brownfields, you've obviously got kind of inner confidence that the mineral resource is kind of going to carry a commercial operation, because otherwise it wouldn't be brownfields. You'd still be on the greenfields hunt.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're really excited by what we've seen. The drilling was really successful. The tonnage that we thought was there based on because these things are exposed on surface, you can see them, you can calculate what you think the tonnage will be. And you take that miner's gamble and you drill deep on them and see if they continue or not. And the drilling, and through all those news releases, the world saw that they do go down to depth and they're there. So those tons are there. So we're very confident in that initial tonnage that we've come up with from the first round of drilling. And
which will be announced in September.
And the metallurgy as well, we have preliminary results. It's can't really talk about them yet, but they're very positive. So, from the onset here, it looks like the tonnage and the grade and the metallurgy are coming together. And so, we know what the end game is. The end game is as many tons at the best grade we can get. And so instead of waiting for production and the mine to start to realize the upside on the brownfields, I mean, we can call it blue sky, we can call it brownfields, we can call it upside. But at the end of the day, that process has to happen, and it's going to happen. And so we want to be the first to realize that opportunity, because we are doing the science, we are doing the work, we are investing a heap of money and time and energy into finding a strategic advantage over our competitors to understand how to best explore for these things. They're kind of a brand new deposit type for our field. Most of us are coming from base metal and precious metals. And so there's a race on to understand these things and really leverage that. And everything that we're learning here, where it's exposed, we're applying that to our undercover work in Quebec.
I remember 2008, 2009, every iron ore, every gold and base metal geologist had to kind of retrain as an iron ore specialist.
Well, that's what we do. And the tools they do cross over. The experience does cross over, and the philosophy, and it's all about philosophy and what your end game is. And that's the ethos of the company, is taking it down that road, getting on that train and taking it there. So, our ethos is, obviously there's three parts to this. There's grade, there's tons, and there's recovery. They're the three elements that we have to define first as a company if we think that this thing can be productive. And so all of those streams, all of those technical streams that are happening all at the same time are answering those questions. But then there's that exploration component of realizing, what the bigger picture is here and what the bigger potential and how what we have fits into that larger tectonic and, pegmatite field context.
Well, in a sense, that's why, coming right back to one of your earlier comments, you're saying you're doing kind of making development decisions at the same time. But is it not too early to talk about development? Because you don't even know what throughput you're looking at. You haven't done the technical and economic studies to assess whether this should be X tons a year or Y tons a year.
Yeah, that's true. From a resource perspective, from a mining perspective, from an ultimate production perspective, it all comes down to tonnage and grade and recovery. They're the three things. And so, why as a company we would be happy with just sitting on what we have? We have an amazing land package with real dikes on them that, the results are that, they're on the scoreboard. We know what we got, and they're very good. And we're just not content to sit there. We're not going to sit there and just say, let's sit on what we got, what we know, and just keep, stepping out from what we know. We need to step into the unknown and realize, because we see the potential, we see the right geology, we see the scale, you can see these things sticking out of the ground. You can see how big these fields are. These are very significant pegmatite fields, and they're actually joined up to large productive gold faults at the bigger scale. So they're well positioned in every scale, and that's a really important thing to see. You'll know yourself that that's what you want to see. You want to see it fitting in at all scales to see that upside. And because we see that all scales, we know that the upside's going to be there. We know the brownfields are going to come, and we know that the volume of pegmatites are there. So we've got a lot to hang our hat on. So that's why we're early movers on trying to understand what the brownfield or blue sky potential, if you like, is on these dikes.
When you talk about the kind of the presence of spodumene in the granite or in the dike, have you got kind of a handle on the controls on that yet? Is it a structural? Is it a kind of a space thing, or is it a kind of a chemistry, or have you got the controls kind of figured out yet?
The short answer is no. We don't have the controls figured out. We know spatially that they have a very strong geometric look to them. The dikes they're planar bodies. The dikes are granite in composition, and they form basically planes in space. But inside that plane there's mineralization, and it can form in these sort of cigar shapes or elongate shapes, and there's alteration is also associated with them. And so in other mineral deposits like epithermals, porphyries, the tops and bottoms, the left and rights, the sides, the periphery, the center, it's all very well defined. And in these deposits, the tops and the bottoms, the centers, the sides, that's not been published. That information is not out there. People have not done the work. And so we brought in the Colorado School of Mines, for example. We have postgraduate students working on those questions as well. So the bigger, the deeper questions about, the why spodumene's forming, where it forms, I think it's probably a combination of structure, chemistry, distance from plutons, all of the above. But there is a larger context to the bigger fields. They behave as a field, not just as a single dike. So we actually have research students answering those deeper, bigger questions that we can't obviously answer at the drill bit. But they require deep thinking, and we're integrating all these massive data sets into that understanding to bring it to the next level.
At kind of the crudest, most basic levels, are your tools mag to pick up the fractures and the faults to see where those planar bodies are, and geochemistry to see where the outcrop of those plunging cigar-shaped elongate mineralized zones are?
Yeah. These dikes, they're largely transparent to geophysics. They don't have a strong electromagnetic response. They don't have a strong magnetic response. So the application of geophysics for actual drill targeting is quite limited still. But the geophysics give us the geological context and the structural context for the position of where the dike is at the bigger scale. And so we're looking for favorable structural positions. And we're starting to understand about, the big structural controls on why they're in place, where they're in place, and whether they're extensional or compressional at the most crude level. And those questions we have answers to, and the map patterns are very clear. Why spodumene particularly forms where it does is still a big question, but we're collecting information on all the dikes in the field. Right now we have geologists in the field, we have research students and our own geologists working together on the field, and we're literally collecting thousands of rock samples on all of these dikes through the field to understand what their fertility is. I mean, people talk a lot about fertility in other deposit types. These also have fertility indexing in them as well. And we've learnt that from the drilling, you can drill the same pegmatite and they can have no spodumene. But what's special geochemically about that barren pegmatite that makes it fertile? Those questions are in the literature. Those answers are partially in the literature. But as you'll know, each of these deposits are unique, and each of these pegmatite occurrences are unique, and they're not the same across the world. They behave differently. These ones are quite special in that they have, the alteration on them is really a really great factor. We've learnt that usually you get a nice clean spodumene body, and it's enveloped in a rind of alteration. So we're starting to understand about when we're coming in and out of them. And if we see one on surface, we're getting more information about, are we at the bottom of the spodumene body, or are we at the top, or are we at the side, or are we off it, but we're close. And because there's literally thousands of pegmatites out there, those questions will lead to actual tonnage, I'm sure, in the future.
And that alteration, can you pick that up through visual kind of field inspection of certain mineral types, or is it some more kind of a trace element geochemistry observation?
No, it's very mineralogical work, and it's actually called Greisen alteration, and it's the dike itself alters itself, and right at the end, after it's crystallized spodumene and it's almost finished crystallizing, it's changing from a liquid to a solid, and it doesn't like it, and it has to do something, so it starts exhaling fluid. And we see quenching textures in the dike which demonstrate that that's happening, and exsolves a heap of fluid, and that evolves into a Greisen fluid, and that produces a quartz and a muscovite type of alteration. And it happens at the edges in these particular dikes, it happens as a rind around mineralization. So now when we go into the field, we know what to look for. We're looking for those alterations even though it might not have spodumene, we're paying particular attention, and we're actually measuring fertility indexes inside of those minerals using handheld devices in the field to understand their fertility in real time.
And that's linked back to the quartz and that muscovite rind, the alteration rind.
Yeah, because
Nice.
the alteration rind itself can contain lithium and other trace elements, and they can be used to vector towards. So we've kind of got three classes. You're in the spodumene, very simple. You're in the alteration rind, so no spodumene, but very good trace element. And then you've got dike with no spodumene, with no alteration. And so they're the three sort of classes that we're working through geochemically to sort of zone towards new pockets on all of these other, this huge volume of dikes in the Yellowknife pegmatite field.
Now, I could talk to you for hours about this kind of stuff, but we're going to take sympathy on our poor generalist viewer and just kind of come back to how many rigs have you got in the field, and what are the kind of the main bits of news coming up in and around the resource estimate and kind of beyond?
Yeah, well, we're pushing the project to pre-feasibility. That's the ultimate outcome. So the pieces of the puzzle are obviously the drilling. We need to drill the meters to know where the tons and the grade is. That works complete.
But hang on, you've done the drilling for the pre-feasibility study, or are you
For the first
leaving
phase
open
of
the
the
possibility?
resource, yeah. So the drilling goes into the resource, but a resource is all good and well if it has no economic parameters behind it. If you can't access it, if you can't put a road there, if you can't get it out, then it's not very feasible. So, releasing a resource is one thing, but putting the economic parameters behind actually getting it out of the ground into market is a totally different piece of the puzzle. So there's streams of information that are happening that are answering those feasibility questions. Metallurgy, for example, how they recover. Do they recover as a DMS, which is just basically you crush the dike and make a gravel, you make a spodumene gravel, or do you need to take it all the way down to like grinding it and putting it into a flotation cell and getting the recoveries that way? Yeah, they're massive questions. If a dike recovers at 20% or 100%, makes a big difference to the final tonnage on a resource. So those questions are happening in parallel. So we need to get there. We need to collect the information to get there. So the first round is the drilling. We've done the initial drill, and then we start understanding that.
But normally one does a scoping study or a PEA before one jumps into a pre-feasibility study.
Yeah. No, we're scoping it the whole way. We're scoping as we go, for sure.
Scoping as you go. So in terms of kind of reporting to the market, here we are sitting in early July. July and August, you're presumably drilling away on the kind of outside of the current envelope, trying to grow that envelope. And then September, hopefully you aim to produce a resource and possibly in parallel with some metallurgical test data.
Correct. It'll be initial resource. And when I say initial, it's initial. There's going to be way more drilling coming. And we have not finished drilling off the limits of mineralization yet. We are still in good mineralization to the edge of a lot of the dikes. Some of them have closed, like the Phi Main and the Phi Southwest. They've been closed. We've drilled out through the alteration and out into fresh rock, so we know they're closed. But the Echo, the Big East, a lot of these other dikes, they're still very much open, and there's as much as a third more at least that we know about based on that learning of spodumene and alteration and fertility indexing in the intrusions. That there's going to be more coming. We know that, and we finished the drilling on some really strong wide intercepts. So yeah, there's more coming, and it'll all be updated as we go.
Good. Exciting times. How much time do you spend on the project?
I get up there probably once every 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, and I spend weeks up there at a time, at the critical times. Yeah. But we have 5 project geologists that work on it. We have during the drilling we were up to 5-6 rigs. Each rig had a team of people on it. We were collecting information geochemical information, logging, alteration information, mineralogical information. So we model all that stuff in real time. We can visualize it all in real time, and we integrate all of our softwares to achieve that real time look, and understanding and maneuvering the drill. And we did a lot of pivoting during our drill program. I mean, we're learning on the fly. This is really, it's great to see them on surface and, put the drill against them and drill and get a good intercept. But at some point you do start missing, and you've got to work out why you're missing. And so you get it back on track. We were very fortunate in this program that it was kind of easy, because they were sticking out of the ground, and we put the drill there, and it was what we thought it was going to be. It was one of those unusual ones where you actually get what you think you're going to get.
It's a very, very, very rare occurrence in mineral exploration.
Yeah, it's like very, very rare. So it's been a pleasure to work on in that regard, because it delivered on the promise, technically.
Yeah. Dave, well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. It's been fascinating for me learning about what you're doing. I look forward to seeing the resource when it comes out, and I'm harbouring a secret desire to come and visit the project and see what you're up to. But good luck with it all.
Yeah, well, the pleasure's all mine, Merlin, and you're welcome to visit anytime, and we'll give you a good geological tour and show you all the big spodumene grains.